Hello, DPS community. Welcome to the EDUCA DPS podcast, where we inform families and connect communities. My name is Javier Ibarra, your host of the EDUCA podcast in English. Our guest today is Brian Dino with what might be the longest title in the district, Instructional Specialist, DPS, EdTech, and STEAM Team. We almost added a few more just to be funny. Brian, welcome to the EDUCA DPS podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Javier.
Thank you for coming on and having such a long title that we can
you bet.
talk about it. Before we get started in our conversation, I want to give our audience a little bit a teaser, if you will, about what today's topic is going to be. So starting off with raising smart media kids in today's digital age means teaching them to balance screen time with real-world experiences, encourage critical thinking, model healthy media habits, and foster open discussion about online content by guiding them to make informed decisions to empower them to navigate technology responsibly and thoughtfully. So with all of that, I want to talk to you. I want to ask my very first question, and I know parents are going to love this, parents and families. How can families choose age-appropriate and educational media for their children?
Well, it's one of the top questions we get, Javier, because there's so much coming at families now. And one of the best sources we recommend to parents are the rating site on a website called Common Sense Media.
Okay.
It's the nation's largest nonprofit. They really have nothing to sell. They're very transparent about their ratings.
Okay.
But anything that your kid wants to play, do, watch, or interact with on a device, whether it's a phone, a Chromebook, anything they want to do on that, Common Sense has over 42,000 ratings. And probably the most important thing for parents is the age-appropriate rating. So for example, if you have a teen looking to do social media, you can look up their rating for Instagram. Instagram's rated at 15 plus. Okay. If they want to do Snapchat, we get a lot of questions about Snapchat. Snapchat's rated for 16 plus.
Okay.
Snapchat works as advertised. But anything your kid wants to do, they could go to that website and they can see the age rating, and they can also get an in-depth review for all the major apps and tools that your kid might want to use. They'll do an in-depth rating on it. And I'll also just add, they also rate TikTok. They're pretty conservative on TikTok's age rating. They say 15 plus for TikTok.
Wow. But
I will let you know that just in the last couple weeks, TikTok's being sued by 14 states. And in TikTok's own defense, they revealed some their own research that said they know TikTok, after I think 34 videos, is very addicting to kids, and it could have a big impact on their sleep and grades, etc. So even TikTok knows it's a very addictive platform. But a lot of these issues Common Sense covers, but certainly if your kid wants to do something or use something on a device, I would recommend their ratings.
Brian, it's no secret that both you and I work for a very large school district. And I can tell you right now that we have a lot more students than you would think that are using TikTok that are younger than 15, right? And so I spent my first 10 years of my career selling advertising, right? And so I know all about clicks and what makes a social media attractive for advertisers, which is the more time that you spend on a platform, the more you spend on advertising, right? And so I think that that's the ultimate goal of any platform of social media. Just talking about social media is the more time you spend with it, the more you can be advertised or served an advertisement, right? And so I think that that's why TikTok is so addicting, is because of that, right? I follow a lot of social media folks, because part of my job is to run social media for the district, and I like to stay up on trends. And I know that a lot of folks were asking, well, where are we going with short form content, right? Are we getting away from that? And the truth of it is, is people enjoy short form content with long periods of time. And what I mean by that is people like to binge watch.
Yeah.
Whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows, people binge watch everything, and they're doing it with short form videos. And you mentioned some 34 videos or 35 minutes, or and then you're addicted to TikTok. I think maybe it's something that our parents and families should be aware of, because I think of the children in my family. We have a 3-year-old in our family, from someone else, and not directly in my family, but we have a 3-year-old, and he knows how to work TikTok. You give him the phone, he knows where to find it, how to go on TikTok, and then he knows, I like this video, scroll up or not, right? Like it or whatnot. He's 3 years old, right? And so it's very concerning, because you're saying that the rating is 15, right? When we go back to, when I was a kid, maybe when you were a kid, parents had the ratings for TV shows and for movies, right? Which we know it's PG, PG-13, or rated R, right? And then we had others along the way, rated A for all audiences type of thing. But we need to get back to that. I think we need to get some ratings here. Like, this is rated PG, but now we have ages. So I just wanted to mention that, because I think it's important for our families to understand what it is, what TikTok is really doing in order. I mean, it's great. It's a great platform. And later on in the show, don't think we're just bashing all social media here. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about how you can use it responsibly. Right? And so with that, Brian, I want to ask, what are some effective ways to set screen time limits without causing conflict in your household? Because I know if I go back to this 3-year-old and I said, all right, no more TikTok for the day, it's going to cause World War III in that household. I guarantee it.
Media use can be a source of conflict for a lot of families. One thing we recommend is a family media agreement, and we have a link to this on our DPS EdTech website. There are numerous family media agreements. You can have a simple one. Common Sense Media has a very simple one. If you go on their site and just search for family media agreement, they have it in multiple languages as well. And it just lays out the responsibilities of the child when they're on a device. Might be a thing like, I will not share my passwords, or my passwords will always be shared with my family while I'm under 14. Here's how much time I'll spend on a screen. Here's how much time I will read or socialize. So putting it in writing actually communicates to your child that this is a serious endeavor, and these are the rules we're going to follow. And so those family media agreements can be a good starting point. We see a lot of families, in fact, we use this with our kids when it was time for a cell phone. So they wanted the responsibility of a cell phone, and we used the media agreement, and there's room for them to also put in what they think they can be responsible for. Maybe it's grades, maybe it's one parent in a session the night says it's hers is chores. So I will do certain chores before I'm allowed to access my phone. So that's a good way to begin the conversation, and also negotiate with your child, and depending on your parenting style, and starting with that type of agreement. If you're looking for certain guidelines, some parents are like, I just want some numbers. What we've seen is for like every 3 to 5 hours of face-to-face contact for every 1 hour of social media, so that you're just not glued to the screen if you're looking for a number. And then for younger kids, we see a lot of our elementary schools really limiting the use of screens, just because they know as kids get older, and especially when they hit high school, screens really are very prevalent.
You said 3 to 5 hours, you get 1 hour of screen time. I think it might be reversed.
It could be, yeah. And again, it's age appropriate, So it all depends on the age of the child, and also, the intent of the screen. There used to be a big focus on screen time, but now with, I'll talk a little bit later about our ebooks and audiobooks, but if I know some kids who have a Kindle or gigantic readers, and their reading really increases, and they're doing it all on a screen. So intent is a big consideration.
Something that I want to point out that you said was, you gave your child a cell phone when it was time for them to be responsible for the cell phone. I think I want to highlight that because it is a responsibility. When I think of that Spider-Man movie where he goes, with great power comes great responsibility, I think with freedom comes a lot more responsibility, right? I think that hit me when I was an adult, maybe in college, where I was living on my own. And I had my own apartment. And I was going to school and I was working away, but I no longer had my mom tell me what to do and when to do it, but also I no longer had that kind of being taken care of. Right now I was responsible to do my laundry, right, and feed myself and all of that, but I had all this freedom, right? And so when I consider this message, when you have more freedom, you have more responsibility.
Right.
And so I wanted to kind of highlight that because it's going to go along with a question that I have for you coming up here. But next, I want to ask you, what are some strategies to help children critically evaluate the information that they see online, right? There is so much information, right? I think of back in the day, you used to have an encyclopedia set. I think of the internet like 10 times that. And so how do we navigate that?
Well, first let me just say I work alongside our library team, and our library team actually goes out into schools and they do media literacy workshops. So just want to let parents know about that. They also can do them for parents. But there's some lessons also on the Common Sense Media side. One of the first things you can do with your kids, or if you're working with young adults, is try to encourage some healthy skepticism. So if something doesn't meet the smell test, how can you find out if it's really true? I would ask, when I ask, we do a lot of programs for students, and I ask them, where do you get your news? A lot of kids will say, I get it from TikTok. So try to encourage them to find other sources. If there's a lot of health trends on TikTok, use alternate sources like what you just talked about. We'll talk about some of the sources we provide that are ad-free and that are vetted for credibility. The other thing, you mentioned ads on social media. Once a teen is on social media, ask them, why am I seeing this ad? What is behind it? Who is trying to sell me this? And trying to get them to critically think about the why are they seeing that specific content, and why my friend is not seeing that. And the other thing is just, there are a lot of different opinions, and encourage kids to explore other sides of the story. We have some tools where we have some debate tools where, like, this is my belief, but what would the other side consider? So this way, you're getting them to challenge their own thoughts, but also get the full breadth of what they're taking in. I
want to highlight something real quick that you said around advertising, right? Because I don't think students, children understand how much advertising is within the TikToks, right? And so going back to the credibility, I like to use the question here that I ask myself is, who's getting paid? Right? When I see something and it kind of, like you said, the smell test, it doesn't smell right, it doesn't seem right, it feels off, I ask myself, who's getting paid? Because when you can identify that, then you can identify the bias, right? If it's on TikTok, the likelihood that someone's trying to sell you something is very high, right? That is a platform in order to sell you something, either with their attention, product, or service, right? Some of our influencers that are on TikTok, they get paid through product endorsements, but it might not seem like it, right? It's kind of like a discrete way of doing that.
Right.
And so I wanted to highlight that because when it comes to the notion of what is credible, it's like, well, ask yourself, who's getting paid here? Right. That's usually helped me kind of maneuver through some of this noise, if you will, because it's so much. There's so much out there.
Yeah, I would just, since we're talking about social media, I would really pay attention to the age ratings for the Common Sense ratings on Snapchat and TikTok. Snapchat really works as advertised. We have numerous schools asking us to come talk to their parents about the perils of Snapchat. And when you have a child on Snapchat, when they get messages, they disappear. And so with TikTok, you can at least see your child's feed, who's influencing them, maybe have conversations about that. If you pick up your kid's phone and you look at their Snapchat, you may not see anything, but they could have had a whole day of influencers and content that you don't want anywhere near your kid.
Yeah, Snapchat is one of those platforms that you talk about responsibility, right? You mentioned earlier that there was an incident at your daughter's school.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when our daughter was in her DPS middle school, the first 2 weeks of school, these girls started getting inappropriate images. They didn't know where they came from. So thankfully, the first thing we want kids to do is to tell somebody, because often they're afraid of, like, if I tell somebody I'm going to lose my phone. They told the school, law enforcement got involved, phones were surrendered to the police, but even then they had a hard time tracking down this person, and it was a lesson for, again, the parents and everybody, that Snapchat has a lot of power, and messages can be sent there that you can't even see. So we have some elementary kids using Snapchat. I would just say that's an absolute no-no. So just, again, trying to educate parents and letting them know there are other choices that they can make, and there's so much coming at their kids. And I would also just talk with other parents at their school and what they allow their kids to have access to.
Brian, thank you for that answering that side question or secondary question, because I think it's important for families to understand that there's some real world consequences. We always think, they're just kids, but people develop different, right? Kids develop different. And so if one is more advanced, they're likely sharing something that is more advanced to them. And so it creates this whole situation. One of the questions that I have for you around this is, and I'm sure families are going to want to know this, because I feel like if I was a family member right now, right, a parent overseeing a young one, I would feel a lot of pressure to give them a phone, because all their friends have a phone.
Sure.
Right? And how do you compete with that, right? And so my next question for you, and I think families are really going to appreciate this one, is what is the appropriate age for a child to have a cell phone?
Yeah. That's probably the most the highest question, or the highest rated question we get, and Common Sense Media gets. The average age is around 10 right now, but again, it's different for every family.
Wow.
You have to think, if your kid, you want to keep your kids safe. Are they responsible? Are they social? Those are considerations. You don't need to start your kid with a full-fledged computer in their pocket.
Sure.
Once you do, it's going to be more work for the family.
Yeah. There's no coming back from it.
There's no coming back, but you can. We see a lot of families starting with a flip phone. Now, if you do a flip phone, your kid's not going to like you. They're not going to take it out a lot, but it's a good training wheel. In one of the parent workshops, and this is not an endorsement, a couple parents use what's called the Gab phone. So you can have like 10 contacts in there. There's no advertising. But if your child's walking home or at the bus stop, you can still contact them, but they can't put a social media app on there or get access to inappropriate content. So there's lots of options for families. Most families are already spending monthly on their own cell phone plan. We encourage them to go to that local store, the provider store, whether it's Cricket or Verizon or T-Mobile. They have options because they know families want to keep their kids safe, but they also know they don't want them to have the world in their pocket. So a flip phone is a good training wheel, and then as your kid gets older, maybe consider giving them a smartphone. I would just recommend. I also want to reference. There's one of the national book bestsellers came out one of the bestsellers came out this summer. It's called The Anxious Generation, and Jonathan Haidt really talks about, in the last 12 years, we've had a phone-based childhood for our kids in America, a phone-based. And before that, it was play-based. And so something to think about, especially as kids are young, that balance between the play and the phone and when to give it out. Because once you give that phone out, it's, as you mentioned, it's a big responsibility, and what are you going to put on it, and depending on your family, how are you going to manage that? And there's lots of options too, and we have them on our website. Common Sense has it on their website. You can, I know of a mom who issued a phone and says, I'm going to see every text message you send, everyone that your friends get. I'm going to see everything you do on that phone.
Right.
That's a lot of work for her, but that's how she
Right.
parents. And then I know another family says, look, I have 2 kids, I'm a single parent, I don't have time for that, but I need to be in contact with. So it's just, find something that fits for your family, but it's there are a lot of options out there for family. And again, you're already spending the money for your own plan, so
Right.
go see. We see some watches that are in schools now, so kids can be contacted, at younger ages, but lots of options. But I think families, if they, the other thing too, I would talk with other parents at the school workshops we do. One of the best things is parents talking to each other and say,
Sure.
"Oh, your kid doesn't have a phone. Oh, Mike, turns out, these 6th graders, they don't have phones, but they say they do." Or
Right, because one friend has it.
Exactly. Say what works for you, and let's figure this out. And but talking with other parents at that school can be very reassuring.
I just want to reiterate that there's nothing wrong with a flip phone.
That's correct. Yeah, again, your kid won't take it out a lot,
Right.
because it's not the cool thing. But
Right.
chances are our kids lost 2 or 3 phones. They'll lose a phone because they're it's just what kids do. Adults
Yep.
lose phones, and you won't be out the $200, $300. But again, it's a good training wheel, and it's a good way to have a conversation with your child. It's like, let's see how this goes. They're training wheels, and then if it goes well and everything else works in our family and media agreement, then maybe you can earn another
Right.
more adult phone.
My first phone I got when I was 11 years old. And so I was pretty excited about it. And it was the Nokia brick phone with the snake game.
Ah,
If you remember the
Yep.
little snake game.
yep.
And it was not a touchscreen, obviously, and so it still had the real buttons. And I lost that phone within a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
That's
my
pretty
parents were pretty upset with me.
Yep.
And I want to say that that's the only phone that I've ever lost. But the truth of it is I've lost many phones. And
Yep.
so when you say that kids want to start off, perhaps with an iPhone or an Android phone, a smartphone really, I started off with a brick phone and I was super excited about it.
Yep.
Because it was a way to communicate with others, right? I didn't get a smartphone until high school, but again, they weren't available until high
Right,
school.
right.
And so I think parents have a much harder decision today
Yep.
at what age is appropriate. And just to remind folks here is the age appropriateness depends on your child.
Right.
Right? If they are mature, if they are ready for the responsibility, then you can start to look at some of the options. And there are other options other than straight to a computer in your pocket, right?
Yep.
We were at a school and there was this young girl, I would say about, 6 or 7 years old, and she had an Apple Watch on her hand, and I thought, wow, like they're starting off young. And she goes, it's not an Apple Watch. And she was showing me how it was a way for her parents to contact her. It looked like an Apple Watch, but it wasn't. So it was still cool in
Yep.
her eyes.
Yep.
So maybe find a cool option
Yep.
for your children.
Yep.
Brian, my next question here is, how can parents help children navigate the dangers of social media? We've been talking about it. We've kind of been teasing it. Let's talk about some resources. How can they go and navigate that?
Okay. Again, I would consult Common Sense Media for a lot of the media options you want your kid to do. But when it comes to social media, I would pick one app to start with. Okay, so say maybe it's Instagram.
Yes.
So I would pick one. What we often see is parents, as soon as they give a phone, they load it up with all apps. TikTok, I need Instagram, I need Snapchat. And what happens to, say, the 8th or 9th grade brain is all of a sudden they are flooded. So don't go from 0 to 100 with the first phone.
Sure.
In fact, Common Sense Media did a study last year, and they found that at the average teen, at the initial start of a phone, they get close to over 230 notifications a day if they don't turn them off. Now, you and I as adults try to navigate our notifications,
Right.
but imagine the teenage brain all of a sudden getting a phone and loading it up with like, all right, I got a phone, I'm going to put these apps on it, and then 200
Immediately.
notifications
Yeah.
without turning. And what happens? What gets crowded out? Well, face-to-face, certainly schoolwork, maybe the other activities. So pick one app,
Right.
and then maybe, it's your decision if you want to follow your kid or maybe have a relative follow, and see how they do with that. And again, start slowly, and then if they can navigate it well and show responsibility, then maybe it's time to add a couple more things. But don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's so much for your kid and also for you as your family.
Right.
And then really, if you look at the medicals, like the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, they really say the age range from 10 to 14 is a critical age to really be hands-on. So you're going to have a phone, or you're going to have a starter phone. I'm really going to watch you, and then as you get older, you can open it up. But those are the critical age windows for really being hands-on with your kid.
Right. So we talked about handling giving them the phone. We talked about maybe putting 1 or 2 apps on there, right? And important to know, right? If your student is receiving 237 notifications a day, are they studying? Are they paying attention? Are they going to school for what you go to school for, right? And so it's all about monitoring that, right? And so we talked about that. Now, my next question is privacy. What conversations should parents have with kids about online privacy and data security?
Yep.
If it's all new to them, how do they navigate that?
Yep. Well, this also ties into, like, if you're going to let them have social media, the first thing they'll do is they will click yes on that. I agree
Obviously,
to
yes.
that you have so much access, even when they're browsing YouTube that's collecting data. So let them know that they are although they're consuming that content, they're sending all of their private data up back to them. If they're using our DPS Chromebook, we're doing all we can to vet those apps they're using on that Chromebook, but on a personal device, it's different. We talk to students about their digital footprint. So let kids know that really whatever they share could be around forever. We say the internet is written in pen. You might want to bring up profiles or digital footprints of other people that you can share with your kid and say, who do you want to be as you get older? What do you want your digital footprint to say about you? So let them know the permanency of the internet. I would also say that as they get older, let them know that, say, closer to as they start high school, their digital footprints are fair game for employers, for college scholarships, anybody looking to work with them. They will be Googleable. They will be subject to a Google search.
Yes.
And how do they want to come across? So we tell kids to use the grandma test. Before they hit send on that photo or video, would I send this to my grandma?
Right.
And if I would, it's probably okay to share it out.
Right.
If I wouldn't send it to my grandma or somebody who means something to me, then don't send it.
Right. These are tough conversations, man. I'm just thinking about the parent listening to this podcast and saying, darn, how am I going to have this conversation?
Yep.
Because they've perhaps already given the phone and you can't go back.
Yeah.
And so I for the parent out there, we just want to let you know that, like, we're here for you, and this is why we bring these types of resources to the podcast in order for you to navigate them, right? These are the things that make this podcast so valuable, because they're out there, right? These things are out there. So, Brian, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the student perspective, the student experience here. We talk about that here at DPS. What happens if my student is being bullied? What can families do if they believe that their student is being bullied?
Well, the first thing is to report it to the school. We certainly don't want you confronting the alleged bully
Right.
or any family members, because that's when really things can escalate. So first, let the school know, even if it's outside of school's hours, and that's, again, where phones come into play, but report it.
Okay.
And then start to involve others, the counselor, the teacher,
Right.
somebody at the school.
Right.
It's also important to collect evidence. So
Right.
it's like, try to get a screenshot. If it's really inappropriate content, don't send it along to anybody. Just get a screenshot so you have some evidence.
Sure.
And you might want to limit your child's access to the content for a while, or from the platform. So, but if it continues on, our schools are trained to take these reports seriously.
Right.
Our safety and security team, if it really rises to the level, I talked about our daughter's middle school incident, it really rose to it's this inappropriate content spread to probably 8 to 10 girls so quickly.
Right.
And then even when the authorities got involved, it stopped. But had they not reported it, it could have continued and really escalated. So those are some concrete tips the family can take.
What a great conversation so far, Brian. I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about more of the resources that your department offers to parents. Can you tell us what district library resources are available for kids and parents for homework and research? And then specifically, how do they access that?
Yep. So every student has access to our Lion and Sora resources. Lion's our library online. The student just needs to log in with their credentials, and they'll have access to real vetted library resources. Let's say you mentioned encyclopedia. All of that is online now.
Wow.
We have Scholastica, both in English and Spanish.
Okay.
So the good thing is, your child is, let's say they're researching a project. Don't send them to Google.
Okay.
Because then they're surrendering their search history, everything, plus ads. Have them look it up in one of the Lion resources or databases.
Right.
So we spend a lot of money on that. They're available on the screen. Ebooks, a great way to learn, especially we're coming up on a holiday break. We have over 30,000 ebooks in our Sora collection.
Sure.
Multiple languages. You can
Yes.
curate a list. There's also many thousands of audiobooks on there. That's a good use for an old cell phone. A parent might have an old device, hook that up to your Wi-Fi, log into Sora, and play an audiobook as your young child goes to bed, or on the car trip. So in many languages. So the more your child can engage with the written word, the better. And those resources are all free. It's on our the resources are on our website, also on the DPS website. You can just search for Lion and it'll bring it up.
Is this something that all school districts have?
It varies in capacity, but
Yeah.
Denver has the most extensive collection for homework resources and ebooks.
I think it's great that our district makes the investment in these types of resources, software, and programs, because it's really what makes us different.
Right.
Right. It's what, as the largest district in the state of Colorado, we need to have these sorts of things in order to provide for all of our students. And because we have it,
Yep.
all of our students have access to these great things, right? I'm getting excited about the holidays that are coming up and seeing if we can't get some of the books, some of the books that I grew up with, right? I'm specifically talking about maybe like Charlie Brown, things like that, to Polar Express, the
Right.
classics, to get the students to
Right.
get excited.
Right.
But also it's reading.
Right. And just to tag on to that, because a lot of this dialogue can tend towards the negative, or beware. You bring up a good point. Even on the Common Sense website, they have the best apps, the best games. So find something your kid will like,
Yes.
and move them in that direction. I was often the parent of no. It's like, no, but find something you can say yes to,
Yeah.
and then you can see how their interests go. So there's also a lot of obviously wonderful content. So
Yes.
find that for your child, and they rank the best apps, the best games for your kid. And so find the positive things as well, and that'll help balance balance out the demeanor.
Absolutely. Brian, we talked about so much today. Do you have a final message for us?
Yeah, a couple of things. I just say for parents, if you're worried about doing it wrong, you're probably doing it right. So,
No, what a message.
there's so much coming at families. Stay connected with your school community, with your teacher, or with what other parents are doing, and it'll help you on the journey. One other thing I just wanted to mention too, it's Halloween coming up. Schools are excited, but it's also National Magic Week. So it's National Magic Week. Harry Houdini, our most famous conjurer, actually died on Halloween. And in that vein, I'm always, when I do programs, I want to remind people what the 6 DPS values are. So I'll just show you what those values are. Oh, the first one is integrity. That's integrity. Accountability is the second value. What's the third one? Oh, students first. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
What else? Oh, equity. That's the other DPS value. And milk, eggs, bread. Oh, that's my wife's grocery list. I'll have to get on that. Collaboration. And don't forget the last DPS value, which is fun. Sometimes we make the fun disappear, and we don't want to make the fun disappear in DPS. So. National Magic Week and Halloween, all a sample of the fun and excitement you'll have when you work with the DPS STEAM team.
I am super impressed at what just happened here today. Wow, that was amazing. That was first time in our show, first time in the DPS studios where we've seen actual live magic. What an experience. You have me in awe. I have to come back though, because of course I'm still the host here. But I want to give our families the opportunity to reflect on this episode and make sure that you are talking with your children and seeing what is age appropriate. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always contact us. You can always look us up on our webpage. But that'll be it. This concludes our EDUCA DPS podcast for today. I want to thank our guest, Brian Dino, for sharing this important information. And I'd like to ask you all to please share this content and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Denver Public Schools Plus, where you can find great EDUCA content like this episode and all multimedia productions. You can also find us on the major podcast platforms. Just search for the Denver Public Schools Podcast Network. Here at EDUCA, we want to express our gratitude to the entire communications department and a big thank you to our proud superintendent of Denver Public Schools, Dr. Alex Marrero, for his continued support to the EDUCA DPS podcast and all of our multimedia productions. Don't forget to tune in to our EDUCA DPS podcast, where the learning journey continues. And remember to tell your children more often, I believe in you and I know you can do it. Until next time.